Good afternoon, Cedarfield. How is everyone doing today? Happy November. It is hard to believe. We are heading into the holiday season, which is crazy. So here we are. I am Karen Wilder. I am the dietitian here at Cedarfield, and thank you all for tuning in. Today's topic is somewhat relevant to holiday season in a way. We are going to discuss the age-old question. I guess it's kind of not an age-old, it's kind of a new question about butter versus margarine. That's a common question I get as a dietitian. Which one's better? Which one should we be eating? And if you are like my mom, I don't really do a lot of I do some of the cooking for the holidays, but it's no secret that when you pull out those Thanksgiving and Christmas recipes, you just have a tendency to use an ungodly amount of butter. Sometimes when I'm putting the recipes together, I'm like, does that really say a whole stick of butter? And it does most of the time. So, with all of the cookies and the pies and the casseroles, we use a lot of butter in the holidays. So, as with all things, though, the holidays are kind of an exception. We tend to go a little overboard and we celebrate, and that's fine. I have a tendency to really cringe when I see those, how to enjoy your holidays in a healthy way, or how to create a healthy, Christmas meal or a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. Because this is, one day out of the year, and, we should just enjoy that time. So I tend to just kind of forget those. Unless you're just really strict and want to, stay committed to your healthy diet, that's fine. But I'm here to give you permission to enjoy that Thanksgiving dinner, enjoy your Christmas dinner, enjoy some of the cookies, and then we can all just get back on track in January. That's what January is for. Okay, so, but butter versus margarine. So obviously we use a lot of butter during the holidays for all the decadent cooking, but just on a day-to-day basis, we can talk about the differences. So to start off, let's review the different types of fats there are, because butter and margarine are both types of fats, or kind of fall into the fat category of food. But there are different types of fats, and some are better than others. So let's review them. There are three main types of fats that we need to kind of keep in mind. So the first one is saturated fat. So saturated fats are the fats that come from foods with animal products in them. So all of our meats, dairy products, eggs, things like that are all going to have saturated fat. So saturated fat gets has a bad reputation in nutrition as being the bad fat. I don't necessarily want to distinguish saturated versus unsaturated as good versus bad. We do need saturated fat in our bodies, but we just need moderate amounts, especially coming from our food. So saturated fat is the one that's not as good for us. That is the one that can raise our LDL, which is the bad cholesterol in our bloodstream, and it can increase our risk of heart disease and stroke. So that's the one that we want to eat in moderation. So meat, anything that comes from animals, meats, dairy, cheese, yogurt, eggs, all of those things, we want to limit those. And I looked in on the American Heart Association's website, and their recommendation, which is the same as what I would recommend, is that we limit saturated fats to 13 grams per day if you're, trying to follow a heart-healthy diet. So you can always look at the nutrition label on the backs of your packages and look at per serving, what the saturated fat amount is in grams. And then just keep in mind, look at whatever that serving size is. And if you're going to eat more than what the serving size is, then you kind of have to do a little math to figure out how much saturated fats you are taking in. Now, if you're in a restaurant or at the Cedar Grill or something, and obviously you don't have a label to look at, you just want to make sure, if you're being conscious of your saturated fat intake, you just want to be conscious of anything that might be made from some ingredient that came from an animal. So whether it's kind of a gravy that has some maybe some meat or chicken stock in it, or something that might have a dairy product in it, it's all going to have saturated fat. Obviously, you won't be able to know how much, but you just know like those are the things that you should eat smaller amounts of. And then, maybe fill up more so on the fruits and the veggies and things like that. Okay, so moving on to unsaturated fats. So unsaturated fats are the fats that come from plant-based ingredients. So these are going to be all of your healthy vegetable oils and the fats that come from that you might get in whole grains, nuts, seeds, all of those things. Avocados are another good example. So anything like with the vegetable oils, all of your canola oils, corn oils, sunflower oil, safflower, peanut, soybean, all of those are going to be these healthy unsaturated fats. So these are the fats that will improve your cholesterol levels. They will raise, some more than likely they are going to just kind of keep the good cholesterol, which is the healthy, the HDL. So that's how in my mind, I'm thinking of many things. That's kind of how I tend to remember the good versus the bad cholesterol. So there's HDL and LDL. So remember HDL, this is not what it actually stands for, but it you can help you to remember the healthy DL, and then the LDL is the lousy DL. That's how I was taught to remember the two. So the HDL, the healthy DL, the good cholesterol. So that is where all of these unsaturated fats, these healthy vegetable oils, nuts, seeds, things like that, these are going to help to maintain that healthy cholesterol, the HDL. And it can also help to lower your LDL. And so they're considered very heart-healthy foods. All right, so we have the saturated fat, which is the animal fat, the unsaturated fat, which is the vegetable fat. And again, our bodies need fat. Fat tends to have a bad reputation. Fat is very high in calories per gram of fat. It's higher than carbohydrates and protein. So they do kind of pack on the calories really quickly, but they're really, especially with those unsaturated fats, those are good heart-healthy calories. So don't think that fats are, bad. Our bodies need fats, but we just have to keep in mind we want to kind of limit them or focus more on those unsaturated fats. Okay, so then there's also trans fats. Trans fats are just no good. So trans fats are, you've probably heard the term partially hydrogenated soybean oil or some sort of partially hydrogenated oil. So so trans fats can exist naturally in some of our foods, and those are okay. We can't really do anything about those, and the ones that are naturally occurring in our foods don't have as much of the negative effects on our bodies like the partially hydrogenated oils that we find in our processed foods, which are created in a laboratory, like in an industrial setting. So those are the ones that research has found over the years that are just not doing our bodies any favors. They are raising that lousy DL, the LDL. They're lowering our healthy DL, the HDL, and they're really increasing our risk for heart disease and stroke. So good news is that the FDA took trans fats off of this. They have this kind of master list of ingredients called generally recognized as safe. So they will do all kinds of studies on different ingredients that food manufacturers are putting in our products. and then they determine whether it's considered safe or not. So a lot of the foods or ingredients that are not on that list anymore are things that are like carcinogenic or whatever. And so the FDA officially removed this trans fat from that list, so the FDA does not recognize it as a safe ingredient, kind of right up there with something that might cause cancer or things like that. And then in 2018, I think, or 15 or 18, the FDA officially banned trans fats, and then they gave food manufacturers a couple of years to kind of, reconfigure their products without using these trans fats. So as of January 1st, 2020, trans fats are officially banned in the U.S. food supply. So that's one good thing that came out of that year. All right, so now we know the difference between the three. And so this is how they play into butter versus margarine. Okay, so we all know butter is made from animal fat. Therefore, it's going to, it comes from milk of the cow, or, they have butter from other animals, just like we have milk or things like that. But typically, we think of it using cow's milk. So because it comes from cow's milk, which is an animal-based ingredient, it's going to have saturated fat, and it will. Well, we didn't really talk about cholesterol, so let's just suffice it to say it will have saturated fat. Anyway, we've been using butter for generations and generations and generations. Well, once, studies came out, in the middle of last century, that this saturated fat could be increasing our risk of heart disease. So we started to create ways to take saturated fat out of products and create substitutes. So margarine was kind of a product of that. So margarine is typically made of all vegetable oils. So margarine has a really bad reputation in our, in nutrition talk and our food supply. I've heard people go as far as to say it's, one step away from plastic, or it's like plastic in a tub, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, it's, it is just made from vegetable oil. So it's not really any different from, what you'd use for cooking oil, or, your olive oil, things like that. It all kind of falls into that same category. Now, why it gets such a bad reputation is because here's another way to think of the difference between saturated fat and unsaturated fat. So saturated fats, because they're made from animal fats, they tend to be solid or more solid at room temperature, whereas vegetable oils and vegetable fat-based fats are going to be liquid at room temperature. So if you think about, like, if you had a bottle of olive oil, and then you had a bottle of maybe like the drippings from when you cooked, a turkey or, beef or bacon, fat or whatever. If you leave that, your bacon grease on the counter for a couple of days, like, it's going to start to solidify. It becomes like lard or, shortening or whatever. But then if you left your bottle of vegetable oil on the counter, it's going to stay liquidy. So if we're trying to make a butter substitute out of a vegetable oil, it's liquidy. So what manufacturers started doing was they discovered this process of partially hydrogenating these oils. And that's a whole thing that they do in a lab or in a factory. And what that does is it causes that liquidy vegetable oil to become solid, like butter typically is. So that is how those trans fats got introduced into our margarines as a kind of a substitute for butter. But then we started to do more research and found out that those trans fats were actually probably doing more damage to our heart-healthy diets than actual butter. So fortunately, we've gotten rid of the trans fats, but we've all become accustomed to margarine, or a lot of us have become accustomed to margarine. Or some people are trying to eliminate butter and saturated fats from their diet for a more heart-healthy diet. So margarine manufacturers had to come up with a way to keep their products on the shelves without using the trans fats. So typically what they're starting to do is they're blending their vegetable oils with these other oils, either usually palm oil or palm kernel oil, to make it more firm and hard like butter is. So palm oil and also coconut oil are two exceptions to the rule. So these are two plant-based oils, but they actually have saturated fats in them like animal-based fats do. So they're kind of an exception. So that's why, we might tend to, or I might tend to recognize some of those other oils that I listed, like avocado, corn, soybean, as opposed to those, because they do have saturated fat in them. Anyway, but that is what is being blended with the other oils in margarines to kind of give it that firm hardness like we would get in butter, instead of using the trans fats that are not good for us. So hopefully that makes sense as to, kind of the difference. So we have butter, which is animal fat, and that animal fat is what's keeping it, firm and hard, and, and what you get in your stick butter. And then we have our margarines, which is all vegetable oils, which does not have the saturated fat in it. But in order to kind of keep it more solid form, they are blending it with usually palm oil, which is a vegetable-based oil, but has a little bit of that saturated fat in it. So which one are you supposed to choose? All right, so another option, I guess, it comes down to taste, your preference. Do you like a really hard form stick? Do you like something that's a little softer, easier to spread? But then it also comes down to your health goals and your, how closely you want to stick to, a more heart-healthy diet, and how much saturated fat you're going to allow yourself to have each day. So if you are trying to follow a heart-healthy diet, I would definitely recommend a margarine over butter, because it just clearly has less saturated fat in it. If that's not an interest for you and you just want to eat whatever you want to eat, then it kind of just comes down to taste. I personally like butter better, but honestly, I'm not opposed to margarine either. There's some pretty good ones out there. Another thing you want to look out for is the sodium content. You probably all know you can get butter that's salted versus unsalted. Margarine probably tends to have more salt in it just to make it taste better. So you want to, look at the sodium on the nutrition label. But so I think when you're comparing butter and then margarine and then all the different margarines, I think I personally would just look at the saturated fat line. None of them are going to have trans fats in them anymore, so you don't really have to worry about that. But I would just look at the saturated fats, and then just choose one that is, the lowest. You want to always try to minimize how much saturated fat if you are trying to stick to a heart-healthy diet. Again, if you're not, then it's just completely up to taste. And then also whether you want it to be soft and spreadable. So if you do like butter, but you like something that's easy to spread on your bread or whatever you're using, they have what's called whipped butter or light butter, and that's usually just butter. They blend a little bit of usually soybean oil or olive oil or something in it, so that it's not quite so firm and hard. So then it's a little easier to spread. So you can think about it in terms, if it's in the stick form, it's going to have more saturated fat in it, because saturated fat is what makes it so solid. So then if you get something in a tub, it's going to have, it's going to be softer, and it's going to have less saturated fat in it. So the tubs are usually a little bit better, but it also just kind of depends on whether it's butter and how much, and it's vegetable oil, and then what the blends are. So there's a lot of blending going on. All right, so hopefully that kind of helps you decide. Some people just prefer the taste of margarine, and that's great. I feel that the ingredients in margarine are getting a lot better, especially now that they've taken trans fats out. So typically margarines, I feel like, have probably become a lot healthier for us, and they're a perfectly good substitute for butter. I don't buy into the whole like margarine's plastic kind of thing. That's silly. I think it's a good alternative for a heart healthy spread if you're looking for one. So always be looking at the nutrition facts label. I would also look at your ingredients if you're shopping around for margarines. You want to look for things like canola, corn, olive oil, avocado oil, safflower, soybean or sunflower as kind of that main ingredient. When you're finding ingredients that have the palm oil or palm kernel oil or coconut oil closer to the top of the ingredients list, that means it's going to have more of those oils, and those are the ones we want to kind of limit. Okay, so again, if you really like butter and you don't want to give up your butter, but you're looking for a more heart healthy option, I would go with one of those whipped butters or blended butters or light butters, because it'll have less butter because it'll be blended with some of the vegetable oils. Or if you trust yourself, you could just use a little bit of less butter, or maybe substitute some other product out there that might have saturated fat in it. Maybe eat less red meat, or maybe switch out your milk or your yogurt for a lower fat milk or yogurt, or switch to a soy yogurt if you really want to keep that butter. So you kind of just have to do a little negotiation for yourself. Okay, and so now a quick word on Crisco and lard. So I'm sure some of you back in the day used this like crazy for cooking and baking. I'm sure there are people out there who still do because they're old school and don't want to break their bad habits. Crisco is actually quite similar to margarine in that it is just a vegetable oil, and it's but they do use a lot of that palm oil in it to give it the more solid form that it's in. So it is going to be higher in saturated fat than just a regular margarine. Some of them claim to have less saturated fat, but they're probably kind of tweaking some of the numbers, or I don't know. Sometimes they're probably just trying to trick us, because those are usually pretty heavy in saturated fat. So I would maybe try to skip the Crisco for going forward, or find a substitute, or maybe just use less of it. But every once in a while, if it's just absolutely has to be Crisco for that perfect pie crust or whatever, it's fine. And then lard, there's not really much good things to say about lard. I mean, that's just straight animal fat that's going to have a lot of that saturated fat in it. So again, if you're using it every once in a while because it's perfect for that one recipe, that's fine. But I would typically try to not recommend it. Okay, so if you have any questions about butter versus margarine and what product is right for you, I'm happy to help you figure that out. But now here is a little funny way to end this discussion. So if you're like me, I love going to the grocery store and seeing all of the funny generic names for products. Like instead of Cheerios, it might be like honey circles, or whatever. So margarines are by far have some of the best generic names, because thankfully we have the one brand name, I can't believe it's not butter. So there are all these really funny takeoffs on that for the generic versions of I can't believe it's not butter. So I thought I'd read a few that I found online. Okay, so here we go. One product, and these are genuine products that you can find them in the grocery store. Maybe not in America, maybe some are from other countries, but these are legit names for generic I can't believe it's not butter. So one is taste like butter, another is you'd think it's butter, and then another is could it be butter? There's also memories of butter, and then just a general is it butter? ? Then this is a good one. Wow, I totally thought it was butter. And then another good one is, what? Not butter? And then we have, I think we said, move over, butter. They have a cow on there. There's another one, unbelievable. This is not butter. And then a really fun one is the big buttery one. So I thought those are hilarious. I love seeing those they come across Facebook all the time and they just crack me up every time. So, alrighty. So it has been great to be here with you all today. Thanks for those of you tuning in. You can always catch the live show on the My Cedarfield app or on our Cedarfield YouTube channel. So if you missed the live stream or you particularly enjoyed it and you want to recommend it to somebody else, you can tell them they can catch it any time of the day, 24 hours a day, on the My Cedarfield app or the YouTube channel. So look forward to seeing you there as well as here. And hopefully you all have a great November. Bye-bye.